So we are live now.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this episode, a special episode now on Pegasus. It is such a pleasant thing to listen to what all things are going on in this world and so many unpleasant things which are going on in the world. We have had a lot of problems that people have given us. And here I've seen that despite people not being very clear about their identity, but they love to show off on Facebook, Instagram. They like to be seen everywhere. They'll reveal their identity. They'll reveal all their secrets openly on their own. And here you have a big UN cry in the world that my personal privacy is being sneaked upon by the government and or various agencies. I remember a wonderful incident about a few years back, which I had read, wherein a malware was put into the Iranian nuclear facility, and as a result of which the machines ran faster, but the security who was looking after it did not understand. The carbines were running faster. Ultimately, the whole Iranian facility, the nuclear facility, was neutralized by a simple malware being put up somewhere in McDonald's or maybe a Pizza Hut, and it passed on through and through to some people and finally landed at the most important point, was the Iranian nuclear plant. And as a result of which the whole plant was dysfunctional. This is how amazing people can be. We know that we are being spied upon, and we've seen Mark Zuckerberg hiding his camera. He doesn't keep it open. We always thought about that. We knew that something is happening. We knew Alexa could listen to everything was there, and yet people love to keep Alexa next to them. They want to keep all their secrets open. They want to be connected to the net throughout the day. They have their smartphone. The moment you turn on your Wi-Fi, you are absolutely open without your clothes, actually speaking, to the whole world. Anybody and everybody can access all kinds of information about you throughout the day. You will not know when your camera was on. You won't know when your microphone was working on. And yet, people are quite careless despite knowing this. Yes, I understand. Most people don't have anything to hide. So it's the people who really have to be worried are the people who feel that they need to be having privacy. I've seen quite a few people with their old Nokia phone. When they come down to the clinic and they've been talking on old Nokia phones. It's so interesting that they don't use a smartphone. They don't use a Wi-Fi. They have a simple machinery by which the phone was meant to convey messages. I mean, your talk time from one person to another person. And that's the whole beauty. But however, with the computers and the internet and the spyware coming up, Pegasus is a big thing which is happening in the market right now. And all governments have really been triggered off to their edge. The opposition raised a huge UN cry in the parliament. So this was by the Israeli cyber intelligence firm NSO Group spyware Pegasus that triggered outrage around the globe. It's very interesting that the NGO which found out more than 50,000 phones which were being tapped, and a few were the president, the prime minister, or a king of a particular country. And this became a very, very, very notorious affair. This software could be sold only to the government, and the government could snoop around everywhere. Of course, we all heard and know that China and North Korea could be snooping upon its citizens day in and day out. They have to prove every single day they are tremendously dedicated to their nation. They have no reason to have any kind of a second opinion. They're not allowed to have news outside. And there could be other people watching you. So you are always graded in the Chinese system because you may not be able to travel next time. You may not be able to go out of the country other time. Your bank accounts may be frozen somewhere. It is extremely dangerous. Big Brother is watching you, George Orwellian's theory, 1984. And this is what is happening with the big data, which is really constantly getting every information about you. And to top it all, people more than willing to give all their information on Instagram, on Facebook, on every possible social media. We have with us a very interesting and a very intelligent person who's a cybersecurity fraud expert and a certified hacker. he understands this no better than anybody else, what's going on in the world. And Sudarshan, thank you so much for being with us and sparing your valuable time. And it was a pleasure to have you the last time around to understand how can we protect ourselves in this. Tell me, Sudarshan, what is this Pegasus all about?
So, Doc, thanks for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to come and speak with you. You kind of really summed it up really well. In a nutshell, Pegasus is a spyware released by an Israeli organization called the NSO Group, a coordinated global disclosure with multiple media houses, put out a list of 50,000 names of people whose phones were likely being monitored. When we say being monitored, we are saying every text message read, every the phone camera turned on, recording software turned on, photos and files being accessed, and that's where we kind of stand today. Investigations are still kind of going on from all the recent reports. It's kind of like when you walk into the house of a potential thief and you see 40,000 addresses pasted to his wall. It leaves the investigators in sort of this middle ground where it does not mean that he has robbed all 40,000 homes, but you should be able to conclude that those 40,000 homes are targets, or at least they are being actively looked at. And so overall, it's not a good look for sure. So, and that's kind of the background of why this thing blew up, is mainly because of the type of personalities that made that big list.
Tell me, WhatsApp says that it is end-to-end encrypted. What is the truth in that? Could they access WhatsApp also?
Well, theoretically, yes. So let me try to explain this to you visually as to how this might work. Okay. So this is your phone. Okay. When you buy this phone, imagine that there are no apps on it. It just comes with some basic functionality. It has an inbuilt camera. It has the ability to make calls. It has GPS and the ability to connect to the internet, and a few other core features, to manage its battery and stuff like that. Now what happens is when you get this phone, boom, you put this little container on it, which is a WhatsApp. You put this other little thing, which is your Netflix app. You put this other little app called the Telegram app. And they're all essentially containers, right? Now, all of these containers, they kind of speak to these core functionalities. So WhatsApp wants the ability to take a photo. So when you install it, you see it asks you for a bunch of rights. And these rights are actually controlled pretty well. So you need to take a photo, or you need to save a file, or photos that somebody sent you. All those capabilities are there. Now, how does something like Pegasus actually work? If within this little container, there's a little hole somewhere that nobody has found yet, it turns out that you can spill over from that little hole and get access to everything that's on the phone. Boom. Okay. Now, at its very best scenario, you only see what's inside the WhatsApp container. And its worst scenario, everything on the phone. There's actually a very fun technique in hacking. It's not entirely relevant here, but to kind of give you an example of how such things work, is what happens if I keep pouring water into this. At some point of time, it's going to overflow. And that's kind of one of the nature of some of the attacks that were used. So think about Pegasus not just as a spyware, but really as almost a toolkit. As a toolbox almost that brings these kind of capabilities to be able to break into and find these little holes in these little applications that you can take advantage of. So that's kind of basically how it works.
Wow, very interesting. So, and it could access. What was the real reason that the Israeli intelligence agency? I mean, of course, Israel can snoop around everywhere in the world. They have some of the best softwares. We had heard about this way back 2 years ago also. This must have been existent from more than 5 years now in circulation. They must be having all possible data about everyone.
Absolutely. I think the first time we actually saw a very detailed report come out on this was in 2016. So yeah, definitely more than 5 years since we're tracking stuff like this. The the primary purpose for any such tool actually comes out of places of good intention. When you're tracking, remember, as easy as it is to track regular individuals, it's that much more difficult to catch real threats. Stuff that has existential risk to our communities and our cities and our towns and our villages and our nation. And so some of these tools were originally built to empower law enforcement and government agencies to just make it easier to do their job and protect the citizens of the country at large. But obviously, like we've learned with everything from the atomic bomb downwards, that not every time we put tools like this to the best use, and the political climate of the last 5 years has probably shifted how these tools are actually being used to actively spy on politicians and activists and reporters.
Yeah, but that always was the case. Everybody loves it. There is no question about it that the snooping would be the biggest part that the government wants. Of course, it starts with all honorable intentions for the drug lords and the terrorists, and how can we snoop on that and what way? But it finally lands up that common citizen. Now, tell me, as a common citizen, how does it affect me?
Right now, it actually doesn't. If you're kind of flying under the radar, it should not affect you directly. But there is some worrying precedent. Given that now a lot more light has been thrown on the existing of such a tool set, it's now a coveted crown jewel. Back in 2018, you might have heard about a ransomware attack by the name of WannaCry. This malware went rampant across the internet and essentially encrypted millions and millions of systems, bringing them down and causing hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. But how did it originally start? So about 2 months before the WannaCry ransomware spread, there was a tool set that belonged to the NSA called the Shadow Brokers tool set that included some of the core capabilities that were later leveraged by ransomware to spread willy-nilly across the world. So I think from a larger citizen's perspective, beyond the spying and the obvious concerns around that, and the lack of checks and balances at a state and central level to monitor and prevent activities like that from happening, bigger concern for me would be if that tool set makes it to the hands of the common cyber criminals, then you're going to talk about the installation of malware and spying at a scale that can be unprecedented. And there has been precedent for this. So in that case now, because of stuff like WannaCry, which did not care about individuals and their status and their stature and their activities in society, but really just went for high impact, now we are looking at a completely different problem. So I hope that the public disclosure and the light that has been shined on this increases the checks and balances that is made to actually protect what I would consider to be a fairly dangerous tools in the hands of a common cyber criminal.
Yeah, but right now it's in the hands of, it is apparently being sold only to the government.
Yeah.
So who is going to question the lawmakers? That's the big problem that we have right now. It's that particular thing. And just recently, about I think a fortnight back, also a few of the superstores were having a malware, and they had to pay a lot of money to get out of that.
Yeah.
Their computers shut down, absolutely, and we heard about that.
Yeah, it's entirely possible, depending upon very specific conditions, of course, that similar things can happen to phones. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. So I think one of the interesting things to really point out with this particular attack versus stuff that we normally see in the cybersecurity world when we are dealing with incidents like this is usually there's a pervasive kind of a pervasive understanding that there has to be some kind of an action on the part of the victim to actually get something like this to work. So typically you would get a malicious Word document in your email and you would open that and you would interact with that, and that's eventually what led to the system getting infected. Or you downloaded something off of the internet. So there is a user action. But some of the exploits that were used in Pegasus did not require any interaction. So for example, I could just send you a message, and the message is specially crafted to exploit that, that little hole that I spoke to you about. And there's nothing you can do about it. And there's no way that you would know about it. And the malware is installed and it's listening in, and there are just no indicators for the layman to even figure out that this is happening. And I think that's really the scary part.
Yeah. So which means you did not have any interaction. You did not open your mail. You did not open the message. You did not do anything. You did not interact. You did not send any further. But it was lying on your phone for a little while, and it went into all your substance, and it could make out everything. Is that
Correct.
how dangerous it is?
Correct. Yeah, it can literally listen in on your phone calls. So the problem over here is when you start going to that level of surveillance, it deviates from social media a little bit. Social media, at some level, you control what you're putting out because you're the one typing it in. But context matters, right? And so if you and I could be having a heated argument over a phone where things are said and those could be misinterpreted, and that's sort of the really really dangerous realm of spying that we get into, because context is everything, right? If you have close friends, and if you ever honestly thought about what are the things that you've told them in a private conversation, context means everything in that. And I feel like that's really the dangerous territory and that line that we're really playing with right now.
How true is it, Sudarshan, that if my phone is left at a particular place for a few minutes and I'm not aware of it, and somebody has any malified intention, it could be getting replicated. Everything in my phone could get replicated somewhere else. How true is that?
It is entirely possible, and I think there was some of the breakdown of what Pegasus capabilities were also kind of reflected this. But yes, in general, an interesting anecdote, not related to mobile phones and Pegasus, but back in the day, it used to be fairly popular for us when we were doing our hacking assignments to clone badge readers. Those badges that employees used to get into the company and sort of open the main gate and go into different rooms. And so you had this little device that could fit in the palm of your hand, and you could hide it under your shirt. And all you needed was a couple of seconds near the target, and you just kind of had to move your hand over the badge and hopefully you didn't get caught doing that, because it is weird. But if you manage to pull that off successfully, you basically had a clone of the badge, and now you could use that badge to open doors inside the company. So in general, physical access to any of your devices, there are things that you can do to protect yourself, but in general, physical access is much harder to defend against.
So this is the same thing you're talking about with the credit card also, with the radio frequency. If you have you shouldn't be using that kind of a card. Corollary to what you're saying is this: somebody could easily have a payment done on the other machine when even you've not even used it. Is that correct?
Right. It's entirely possible. Specifically credit cards, the use cases kind of have changed over time. Even our systems have adapted, and we are putting checks and balances outside of transactions nowadays. So, for example, you can't tap your card and simply pay for $10,000 at one go. So there are checks and balances outside, and so that ecosystem is steadily improving. But in general, I think if we had to take anything away from this call, that physical access is always difficult to defend against. No.
So ultimately, your phone is your biggest enemy, and it's replacing your office. It's replacing your every possible thing. It's next to you. Anything else may not be next to you as much as your phone throughout the day, 24 hours. So your data, your privacy, your personality is at risk at any given point of time, and it's being constantly, there is a chance. And of course, with the new smart TVs, uh, they have a camera there, and that could be also taking up with your Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah. Yeah. On the internet, if you go and scan the internet, okay, and this is a really fun activity for somebody who's trying to get into the space. There you have now the ability to scan the internet, and there are services out there that scan the internet, and they sort of document everything that they see, and you can see some really cool stuff. You can see everything from software that monitors the plant floor and how stuff moves. That's exposed to the internet. You can see baby monitors. You can turn off people's light bulbs just because of the way they've been configured or I would say misconfigured and kind of put out there on the internet. So with the kind of world that we are living in, where we have devices all around us, it's the security ecosystem is becoming very, very complex, and we are struggling at some level to meet those challenges.
Wow. So as a common man, what should one be doing? Because I heard some weird stories about Alexa also in a house in the US, how the baby was controlled by somebody else through Alexa.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Is it possible with any of these devices that you have, so-called your support system in your house?
Yeah. So anecdotally, it's more of a, this is where the world is heading, right? And really, when we talk about security, I think at scale across the consumer base, what responsibilities lie with us, what responsibilities lie with the vendor, what responsibilities lie with the regulators, and what responsibilities lie in the legal system. And so that we have checks and balances to ensure that everybody in this chain of events is taking reasonable steps to ensure that we're not willy-nilly being compromised, or our data is not willy-nilly being stolen beyond the extent that that goes into this really dangerous and shady realm of spying. And I think that's kind of really important to try to figure out where does that lie. At an individual level, I think the best that we can do right now is ensure that those apps are being updated. When you see that update, right, immediately your mind goes to features, right? But take a second sometimes and open up, what's the update, and you will see terms like bug fixes or crashes, and that really indicates to you that some security issues have been found and they have been proactively fixed. So as an individual, the responsibility really is update the apps, because that's the best you can do right now in situations like Pegasus. And the other chain of responsibility is an entirely different conversation.
So between iOS and Android, you're more accessible to problems. It's an open software. Would that be right? Correct to say that?
Well, it turns out with Pegasus, no.
Yeah, with Pegasus, no.
It turns out with Pegasus, no. Yeah.
So Pegasus is the larger thing for the government. As of today, it doesn't affect a common man. The purpose of the whole exercise is to see that you will have smaller babies of these, and that could be used and misused by people at various phases. An employer can do that for his organization, and every possible data about them could be screened. So on a smaller level, how could it affect a common man, and what is it that a common man should do? Because this is going to happen. There is no question. This is going to and it will be used, misused, abused, overused by people.
Yeah.
And no question about it. The intent maybe have been good in the beginning to go against drug lords or the mafias or the terrorist organizations and whatever. But at the end of the day, it'll be misused. How does one protect himself, herself?
Yeah, that's in the case of Pegasus, like I mentioned, the mechanism that they were using to infect phones is something that I would consider to be fundamentally indefensible. So we really don't have a mechanism to even know that this is happening. And so really the philosophy is that the common man should not be expected to understand complex security protocols and do's and don'ts, because that list on a daily basis is growing. And the ability, if you look at a scale of India with 1.3 billion people, we can't really scale cybersecurity education in a short amount of time to that large of a population. And so we have to shift that responsibility upwards. But like I said, from an individual user standpoint, I think the best you can do is update your phone and moderate your behavior on social media. Though that's also a difficult proposition. So I think I'm just going to stick with just update your apps and update your system. When you see that pop up, don't wait. Connect to the Wi-Fi, download it, be done with it, move on with your day.
Okay, so the bug fixes should be an important part of the story, and remove some unnecessary apps from your system. How would you know which app or what? A lot of people have the habit of pulling up a lot of apps on their phone, which is taking up a lot of space. Mm-hmm. And then that could be a malware too. Like I remember Torchlight was supposed to be taking a lot of data. One of those apps.
Yeah. So there's two separate issues over here. Where when you talk in that realm, what I would fundamentally advise as a basic security practice is to ensure that you're downloading applications from the official Play Store. Right? In cases, this is probably the case with kids who want to play certain types of games. They figure out this mechanism of getting a cracked version of the game from somewhere and downloading the app from an untrusted source, and that typically is the start of all problems. And so going through that official Play Store is the best hygiene practice you can do, because Google and Apple both on their side are trying to maintain certain checks and balances to ensure that excessive data collection is not happening. Of course, their scale is limited and effectiveness has been questioned over the years, but it is still better than bypassing them to get what you want.
Very, very, very interesting. So should I be switching off the camera of my laptop and on my phone regularly unless it is in use? Is that what you would recommend routinely?
Yeah, I mean, especially I think if you're in sensitive conversations, you definitely want to be careful. So I mean, for example, you, Doc, are probably having a bunch of private conversations that are extremely secretive to people that don't want for that to get out, and those might be situations where you want to exercise caution for those few hours or that 1 hour, that 45 minutes of your day.
How about the internet? Should you be switching off your Wi-Fi connectivity and switch it on only when you're using it? Does that matter? Or the moment you switch on, it takes very little time for somebody to hack onto you?
Yeah. So this is not a professional opinion. This is more of a personal opinion.
Yes.
The way we look at it right now is essentially we are connected at all times. And that connectivity has integrated into our way of life. We need the connectivity. It used to be food, clothing, shelter, and now we have added internet, right? And so to deny its existence is an impractical solution. So while you can, I would expect that a large majority of the population is not going to go through the hassle of doing that unless and until that pressure comes from elsewhere, which is why I said at the individual level, I really do believe that just the basic hygiene practices are great, but it seems unlikely at this point of time that we can easily turn the wheel and say, hey, no, let's shut off the internet for every night before we go to sleep. Let's put our phones on airplane mode, because hey, we live in a world where we have sleep monitoring apps that fundamentally rely on being on when you're sleeping, right? And that's something that you like, and that's something that that's data that you enjoy seeing. So it's going to be difficult for us to rapidly turn the clock back on this.
Tell me, I remember you have the Norton antivirus and you had all kinds of antiviruses on your Windows earlier on, all those. But we have nothing on the phone. We are quite open. We have no antivirus to check on unleashed malware.
Yeah.
Do we have anything like that?
Yeah, I mean now there are a lot of vendors that provide these antivirus solutions for phones as well, and it's definitely something that's worth checking out and installing on your phone.
So it is worthwhile putting up those, because I thought they weren't very useful. What it used to be on our laptops or your desktop earlier on.
I think usefulness is a very comparative statement, right? But something in situations like this, something is definitely better than nothing.
So if you say Pegasus is 5-6 years old, what is the next thing that you see in the hacking department that you see? What is the latest development that's happening in this particular thing? Now, Pegasus is 6 years old. I'm sure there's a lot more to it which has come up.
Yeah, I think one of the most recent and interesting developments over the last 6 months has been something called supply chain attacks, and this is something that corporations have been dealing with. It doesn't affect the individual as much as it affects organizations. What this does is, for example, you use a zip software like 7-zip, perhaps. So just as an example, let's say that somebody hacked into the company that made 7-zip and changed the 7-zip program to include malicious software. And now all these people are sitting and downloading 7-zip. And that's how the malware spreads. So instead of targeting you directly, I'm targeting a software that's commonly being used. And that update goes to everybody. And that's how the malware spreads. So I think that's been one of the very interesting developments.
Wow, interesting. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks for your time, Sudarshan. It's
Yes.
always very, very encouraging to see the positive part of the story and what you have to sell on the hacking and what's going on in this world. This is going to grow exponentially. Everything here on the chipset has grown exponentially. So also I expect that things of this kind, privacy is historical. You think your data for your Aadhaar card was protected? I'm sure the whole world has all the details about you. It's being sold and resold. Your laughter reveals all that. I mean, no question about it. All those so-called encrypted data is also of no use. Things are happening around everywhere.
Yeah.
And so you just try and be as careful as you can, not to put in too many documents back there. And could you store it in a safe library somewhere on the cloud, which somebody could not have access?
Yeah, I think that's again one of those fundamental security principles where you say the word backup. I think that's in general a good practice, and the way you back something up is you don't back it up on your own machine, because if that machine breaks, you need to be able to restore it from somewhere. So I think that's a fantastic recommendation. But also one of the things that I would like to tell anybody who's listening in is, if the industry definitely needs people, and if you're just getting into thinking about what you want to do with your life, cybersecurity is a great option, because we really need more people working on some of these really difficult problems.
So when are you starting your hacking classes for me? So let me start.
Very soon, Doc. Very soon. The moment I get some time off work.
Yeah. Congratulations on getting acquired and starting a new company. Very
Thank you.
proud of you, and a wonderful achievement at a young age. I was just telling it by the time most of the consultant friends of mine, post-graduation finish karke and their fellowships, they start their life at 35. Sudarshan is ready to retire in life,
Well, thanks for your good wishes, Doc. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. All the very best, and thanks very much for your time, and we'll pull you back again and again, ever so often.
Absolutely.
Friends, that was some update on Pegasus that we wanted and how it can affect our day-to-day life. Because so far, most people thought that Pegasus will affect the big guys, the prime minister, all the other politicians, and your big names that you had in the industry. But no, it can come in a different form to you, and it will affect you sooner or later somewhere. You rather be very, very sure about it, and be very careful that it doesn't get affected. Be very clear about how to use your phone. Don't let it be multiplied. Your credit card, every which way your security can be breached upon at any given point of time. Be very careful. That's a very important message that Sudarshan has given us. Thanks so much. And our next speaker this Thursday is somebody very, very intelligent, interesting, and a very well-achieved guy. He has been in the Guinness Book of World Record and has applied for it 7 times in the past. He has been the Chief Managing Director of Air India, the Indian Railways, and the ITDC. He's turned around companies. He's done a lot of things for the country. He's none other than Mr. Ashwani Lohani, and we'll be having him with us this Thursday evening at 8:30 on Mirror Wisdom Reflected. He has run one of the largest organization in the whole world called the Indian Railways with more than 14 lakh employees. And he has seen to it that accidents have gone down, whatever that he could do in his realm. And he has made the best of it. ITDC he changed, MP Tourism he changed. It'll be a pleasure to have Mr. Ashwani Lohani this Thursday evening, 8:30, 29th of July. And thank you for tuning in. Good night. Be careful. Be safe. Bye for now.
Good night, sir. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Navneet, for your time. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.